My name is Imbi Nimi and I'm a Melbourne-based writer of long and short fiction. My debut novel, The Spill, won the 2019 Penguin Literary Prize and came out with Penguin Random House Australia in June this year. I'm really thrilled that I've been asked by Ballarat Libraries to talk to you today about reading. I have always been a big reader, though when I say always, I feel like I have to add the caveat that it's sort of actually almost always, because when my kids were little, I found it really hard to sort of carve out time to read for myself. But I did read a lot for them, or to them, sorry. So I think that counts. So yes, let's just say I've always been a big reader. I tend to read the last thing at night and in the morning, first thing in the morning. So, you know, books literally bookend my day. I feel like it's this little buffer that I create between sleep and the world, and sleep. It sort of helps me wind down at night and helps me warm up into the day. While I prefer physical books, my Kindle allows me to read in bed while my husband sleeps. Ideally, I prefer to read in silence. I like the words to kind of fill my mind and the space around me. But having said that, I live in a household with 3 sons and 2 stepdaughters. So silence is a luxury that I don't often get. I'm pretty much can read almost anywhere, anytime. I am partial to the odd audiobook. Find it is a great incentive for walking, getting a bit of exercise, or doing housework. I hate housework. But if I'm listening to a really good book, then I'll be like, oh, I might just clean the oven so I can listen to the next chapter. I find that I really need to choose my audiobooks carefully. Some books you just want to pause and reread a sentence or a paragraph because the language is sort of beautiful, or it's kind of got this denseness to it that you want to kind of pull apart. So I tend to listen to non-fiction or commercial fiction where I'm not being asked too much as a reader. But having said that, I did listen to Burial Rites recently, and I just loved listening to that. The reader just did such a beautiful job, and I totally fell in love with the Icelandic language, and now wish my name was Imbi. How would I say it? Arnestóttur, or something like that. It's just like candy for the brain. I think any book that you read sort of creates a little window into another world. So, you know, being in lockdown we have been, many of us for many, many months, I think it's really particularly important to have those little windows to look through. During lockdown, I've mainly focused on Australian books, particularly Australian books that have come out in 2020, and then even more particularly Australian debut books coming out in 2020, and then to get even more specific, Victorian debut books coming out in 2020, because let's face it, all of us in Victoria have had a bit of a rougher ride than the rest of Australia. I remember when I was sort of, you know, still trying to get published, that my friend and the writer Robert Lukens told me that there was this sort of, I don't know, this sense of the class of, you know, 2017 or 2018 with debut writers, like a sort of like a club that gets formed. So I feel like the connection between the class of 2020 has been forged in fire, like literally bushfire, and now in a global pandemic. You know, our books are emerging into this sort of unprecedented, I hate that word, publishing and book selling landscape. And so it's harder than ever for our books to find their readers. So, you know, books take years to write, and publishing deals are so hard earned. So, you know, to finally achieve both of these and then have your first book, or any book that you've invested so much for yourself in, to come out in the middle of a global health crisis is you know, disappointing. The books that I have been reading or plan to read, these are all books that have come out in 2020, some by debut writers, and this is only part of my to be read stack. My to be read stack is now so big, I'm actually worried that it'll crush me in my sleep. So I keep seeing the headlines, debut novelist killed by good intentions. So in between all these books, I've also been returning to some old favourites. Through getting published, I actually reconnected with the best friend I had when I was 11. And it reminded me of this book about two best friends that I'd read back when we were friends at Newcastle High School. I had ordered the book through the Scholastic Book Club, but I could not for the life of me remember the title or the author, just a few loose details. And over the years, I've sort of tried to Google for it, but I've never had any luck. But I put something on Twitter the day after I'd received this email from this old friend. And within 24 hours, thanks to the writer Alison Tate, who does a great podcast called So You Want to Be a Writer with Valerie Khoo. Thanks to Al and to I think the group is called Your Kids Next Read group, I found out the title of the book within 24 hours and had ordered it online. And here it is, Two Are Better Than One by Carol Ryrie Brink. See, that's Virginia and that's me. So in case you're wondering, the book that I fell in love with, it's probably the first book that I truly fell in love with as a young adult. And that is The Passion by Jeanette Winterson. You can see here, it's got Nimby Nimby 1992. So I was 21, I think, when I bought this copy, but I think I'd borrowed a friend's copy previous to that. This was such an important book to me, and it was so wonderful to reread it and find out that it still sang to me as strongly as it did when I was, in my late teens, early 20s. There's obviously so much new stuff to read. It's great to sort of occasionally go back and reread an old favorite, even just to gauge how much I've changed by how I feel about the book now, or even how much I've remained the same. In this case, it was a chance to reflect on how I had kind of had those feelings, those huge feelings of unrequited love and unfulfilled passion. And, I used to feel like those feelings made me intense and interesting. But rereading The Passion kind of, it evoked those feelings again. I, as an almost 50-year-old woman, made me so glad that I'm past all that. Hopefully. For the record, actually, I've always thought that the book's refrain, "I'm telling you stories, trust me," would make a great literary tattoo. I do have one tattoo, and it is a single ampersand. That was really painful. So having like two sentences is beyond me. So I actually made that the title of my author newsletter instead. Far less painful. I think reading is so important for writers. I always sort of a bit confused when I speak to writers who say that they never read, because it's the best way to study the craft. As I read now, having written 3 manuscripts of my own, sometimes I get a bit too aware of the strings being pulled by, the writer puppet master. But, there's still books where I just lose myself completely in them. And when that happens, I value that even more. It's like the best feeling. It's as good as a holiday. In fact, it's the closest thing to a holiday that I'm getting at the moment. I also read a lot of unpublished work, which is, a really great exercise for any aspiring writer, as well as helping out a fellow aspiree. I think I've made that word up. Anyway, you also get a chance to kind of really consider, but by reading a book in its sort of a rawer form, what's working and what's not working, and sort of learn in your own writing how to kind of avoid those things. And I feel like that it's books with unusual narrative structures that really kind of had challenged me. And I think specifically these two, there's Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. I just really love the breadth. I mean, it's awe-inspiring, the breadth of his imagination with this book, and how he weaves the narratives, the very distinct different narratives with lightest of touches. He leaves so much room for the reader, and as a reader I really kind of I enjoyed that space that he created for me. And then also Formaldehyde, which is actually by my friend Jane Rawson, won the 2015 Seizure Viva la Novella prize, and has this sort of dark non-linear structure. And this book really inspired me to be bold with the structures of my own work. So I have a lot to thank Jane and Formaldehyde for that. In terms of authors that I admire, you know, I've obviously mentioned Jeanette Winterson, David Mitchell, Colin McCann, Kurt Vonnegut, Anne Enright, Haruki Murakami. But really, I mean, they're just some names of authors that I've read and loved. But the writers I admire the most are actually my friends who write. And in doing so, you know, kind of share my passion for laying words on the page, and walk alongside me through this kind of writerly journey. These are just some of the books that my my friends have written. These are the ones that have been published. Of course, there are the ones who haven't been published yet, whose manuscripts are still trying to find their home. And then there are the ones who haven't finished a manuscript yet, or may never finish a manuscript, but who just love to write and love to engage with writers and writing. So all of those writers inspire me and spur me on. I just value my writerly friends so very much. In terms of what I'm currently reading, look, I've almost finished this book, Vanishing Half, which has kind of swallowed me whole. And given me so much to think about. This has been a real gift at this time. And in terms of what's up next, well, there's either tossing up between Kokomo, which won the 2019 Victorian Premier's Unpublished Manuscript Award by Victoria Hannon. I've heard such good things about this, and I've sort of swapped some emails with Victoria, and she's a top human being. So it's either that one, or it's going to be Too Much Lip by Melissa Lukashenko. This one, the 2019 Miles Franklin Award. And I kind of feel like this is an important book for me to read, because it's part of my commitment that came out of the Black Lives Matter movement, to read more books from diverse writers, particularly Australian writers of colour. So I'm really looking forward to reading this one. I'm currently revising my second manuscript, which is the one I wrote before the spill. It's loosely based on the Fishman of Toolendo out in Western Victoria. This was a man who was found dead on a rural property in the 90s wearing a man-made fish suit. When I say man-made, I mean homemade. I didn't feel like I had any right to write that particular man's story, but instead sort of use that as a starting point, you know, start to imagine like how someone could come to have or to meet such an end. So I'm working on that at the moment, and my reward after I finish revising that is to write my fourth manuscript, which was inspired by a misaddressed postcard that I received in the mail. But I won't say anything more about that for now. So thanks again to Ballarat Libraries for inviting me to talk to you about reading, a subject that's obviously very close to my heart, and it was a great opportunity to do some quality virtue signalling with my huge stacks of books. But I want to end out this by doing a big shout out to my mum, Helen, who lives in Mount Pleasant in the shadow of Sovereign Hill. Hello, Mum. Stay safe, stay home, and thanks again.